Hello everyone, Time to Grind here, and today I wanted to talk about Diabotical. And Diabotical is the newest attempt at a modern day arena shooter, and I have to say, in my opinion, it's one of the best that has come out recently, and I think it has the highest chance of succeeding, but it is an arena shooter, so only time will tell. But if you hadn't heard about Diabotical yet, it is a free-to-play arena shooter that just came out where everyone plays as little egg bots. And you don't have custom classes, you don't have attachments on guns or abilities and ultimates. Instead, the game is all about knowing where all the different weapons on the map are, along with the armor and health pickups. So in most of the game modes, you start out with no armor and 100 health and kind of just like a starting assault rifle and your melee weapon. And before you get in a fight, it's important to go around the map and collect the weapons that you want, like rocket launchers, shotguns, railguns, pretty much all the stereotypical weapons you would expect in an arena shooter. So if you played Quake or Unreal Tournament or any of the modern day attempts at an arena shooter, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And on top of that, you're going to want to try to stock up on armor and health and then find some people to kill once you're all geared up. And obviously that is easier said than done. So you're constantly having to adapt and know where your enemies are. You know, you might hear someone close by when you aren't really ready for a fight, so you either have to decide if you're going to try to run away using the awesome movement mechanics like strafing and rocket jumping and bunny hopping, or you may just try to turn around and fight. And the movement in this game is just as awesome as you would expect in an arena shooter. You can go super fast, and I have not played arena shooters in a decent amount of time, so my movement was not the best in the gameplay, but you can watch some crazy people on YouTube just going faster than the speed of light, you know, just doing loops around the map and getting all the weapons, and it's really, really impressive what you can do. And so the gameplay itself is very, very solid and about pretty much, you know, what you would expect from an arena shooter. There are power-ups as well on some of the modes that can do things like give you a ton of damage, and, you know, there's kind of like these grenade things as well that you can find on some maps that you can throw, and they're things like smoke grenades, or they'll create a little bubble that slows time or do a little explosion. But for the most part, in my experience, they seem to be secondary to the main guns, which is good. It's nice to have them for a little bit more variety than you would have in some other arena shooters, but they don't get in the way of the core gameplay, which is nice. The maps in the game kind of give me a sort of Overwatch vibe with a slightly cartoonified but still kind of realistic look, which I think lends itself really well to this type of game, as there isn't a lot of visual clutter and it keeps things simple, which you really need when you're playing a really fast-paced shooter, and that also means that the game is a lot easier to run. And there is a pretty good variety of maps in the game on most of the modes, which is nice. And speaking of game modes, there's a pretty large variety of game modes in the game. You have your casual game modes like free-for-all where everyone's against each other, and it's a little bit more chaotic because you don't have as much time to find weapons and armor before coming across an enemy, but in my opinion it's one of the more fun game modes. You also have a special variant of free-for-all where everyone has like an insta-kill railgun type weapon, which is even more chaotic than the original free-for-all. There's also several 4v4 and 5v5 modes. There's things like kind of similar to Capture the Flag. There's also an interesting take on TDM where every time you die, your respawn time gets longer and longer, and if all the members on your team are dead at the same time, you lose. You then have ranked modes, which is obviously super important in this type of game, and you have the, you know, core arena shooter experience of 1v1s on the normal maps. So this is where you're going to be spending a lot of time gathering weapons and armor and using map awareness and skill to defeat your opponent. You also have a cool game mode called Aim Arena, which can be 1v1 or 2v2s, and you start with all of the weapons and a decent amount of health and armor, and you're put on these tiny maps. And you can't regen health or armor, and when you die, you get just put right back in that arena, and the first to get 2 kills wins the round, and then you both move on into another smaller kind of arena, and so each map is kind of like 3 different smaller versions of the map. So it's similar to 1v1s, but it's more just about the core gunplay and movement instead of the map knowledge and kind of building up yourself. And then you also have ranked versions of some of the team game modes. On top of that, there are custom games with server browsers and even a map editor, which is really awesome. And one of the custom game modes that I played were these like race maps that are pretty awesome, and there's these rocket jump maps that give me TF2 vibes, because back when I played Team Fortress 2, I used to spend a lot of time on rocket jump servers, so it's really cool to just have a server browser for things like that. And it's just really amazing to see a game with a server browser and a map map editor in 2020 because, we don't see that very often, and also it really helps out smaller player bases thrive, in my opinion. So overall, the game is fantastic and exactly what any fan of an arena shooter would want, but the big question is, will it succeed? It seems like every single arena shooter that has come out in the last 10 years has not done very well, and obviously each game, may fail for different reasons, but it just seems like overall people don't want to play arena shooters anymore, at least not as much as they did back in the day, which is disappointing. Some things going for Diabotical is, firstly, it's free to play, which is vital for this type of game. Secondly, the art style, like I said, is a little softer, more similar to Overwatch than a super hardcore game with amazing graphics, so that'll help attract new players. Also, the amount of customization of the egg bots is really fleshed out and awesome, especially paired with the battle pass that gets you, new stickers to put on your bot, new weapon skins, music. There's just a level of progression that helps new and casual players stick around, which is great because just having a good fleshed out progression system in these multiplayer games really helps out for a casual player base. And like I said, time and time again, you need a casual player base along with a competitive player base if you want a game to thrive. And then you have the whole Epic Games exclusivity. On one hand, it's definitely going to hurt the game a decent amount, it only being on the Epic Games Store. There's a lot of people I know that still refuse to download the client, or at the very least are hesitant to open it up. I mean, the last time I even opened up the Epic Games Store was half a year ago, and that was to review the Diabotical beta at that time. The good thing, though, that's coming out with them partnering with Epic Games is they are funding the next 2 years of development for the game, which is massive. A lot of the times, these arena shooters are made by indie devs, and when the game doesn't do well, it's not like the devs can just keep updating the game for years when they aren't making any money. And then because there are no new updates, the game dies even faster, and it's kind of just like this never-ending cycle. So with the game getting guaranteed 2 years of development, that could be pretty big, especially with them adopting the season mechanic tied with the battle pass that modern multiplayer games are doing nowadays. So I really hope that this game does well, because to me this is the last hope of a modern arena shooter doing well. If this game fails, I think it means modern arena shooters are dead for at least a decent amount of time. The one thing I will say is I really hope that Diabotical starts advertising a lot more. I have seen absolutely zero advertising or hype for this game outside of the circles I'm a part of, and with them having Epic money, they really should be using some of that to hype the game up and build a good player base. But overall, I would highly recommend you check out Diabotical if you are a fan of arena shooters, and if you're just a fan of shooters in general, you should definitely give this a shot and see what all the hype is about when it comes to these classic arena shooters. But if you have played Diabotical or just from watching gameplay, I would love to know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. I love having conversations with you all. And if you enjoyed this video, then consider leaving a like down below and subscribing to see more gaming reviews. I make about 2 to 3 gaming reviews a week on a wide variety of games, and FPS games in particular are one of my favorite genres, so if you want to see reviews of future FPS games, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell like all the big boy YouTubers say. And if you can't get enough of me, I have a podcast called Media Crash, where we talk about different genres of games and movies, and we actually made an episode talking about FPS games, so feel free to check that out as well. But if you guys are going to be grinding out some 1v1 wins in Diabotical, I wish you luck, and I'll see you guys next time.